Hello everybody, and welcome to a new video in a series called A Raid Leader Explains. My name is Mr. TWW, and I'm currently a raid leader for the raid team Team Rocket in a guild Zeros to Heroes. My hopes for these videos is to hopefully explain things in a way that will make sense and help you avoid any unwanted potential deaths. In today's video, we're going to be going over Operation FloodGate, which is a brand new dungeon in Season 2 of the War Within expansion. There's plenty of things happening in this dungeon, so let's just jump right in. The first mob we are going to be talking about is the Mechadrone Sniper. These enemies do two things. They use Snipe, which is a hard-hitting, non-interruptible ability that will target one player, and they will use Trick Shot, which hits multiple people but is interruptible. The next two mobs go hand in hand as you get to the first objective. First, we'll talk about the loader bot here, which does a simple spin AoE called Wind Up. It cannot be interrupted, and as far as we could tell, even when you stunned it, the AoE kept going. But it's just a short distance around them, so just stay away from them. The second is the Shredinator 3000, which has one extremely important ability called Shredation. The important thing is to move towards the end of its cast. You want to move as the saw blade will pop out of the ground. It will deal massive damage, and dealing damage constantly as you are in it. The second ability he does is Flamethrower, which is just a frontal cone of fire damage, which he will spin around in a circle. Our next enemy is going to be the Demolitionist here, which will use an ability called RPGG, which is going to put many big circles on the ground that you do not want to stand in. Afterwards, they will attempt to use Reload. You want to make sure you stop this with stuns or knockups or other forms of CC, otherwise they will be able to use RPGG again. This one is a quick one. This is a Venture Co. Architect who has two abilities. One is Nail Gun, which if it hits you, will root you to the ground. The other is Rapid Construction, in which they will Fortnite build a tower and take no damage. Destroy the structure and defeat the Architect. Not so much deadly as annoying. This is the Dark Fuse Blood Warper, whose only main concern is Warp Blood, where they will target all players, dealing damage and putting an Absorb shield on them that needs to be healed off. This is a good place to use a defensive if you need one. Welcome to either your first or second boss, Big Mama. This boss is accompanied by 4 Dark Fuse Mechadrones which need to be killed in order for you to enter the burn phase. Failure to do so will have the boss casting Kilo Block Barrier, which does group-wide damage and makes the boss take 80% less damage while the shield is active. The first ability we are going to talk about from the drones is going to be Doomstorm, which you can see here. It is a line of circles that does a lot of damage. Don't stand in it. This is a two-parter. The first ability is Maximum Distortion from the drones, which will deal damage and knock everyone away from it every 2 seconds for 14 seconds. Just interrupt this. The second ability is Jumpstart, which you can imagine is like a worse version of the Missive Tyranid Scythe boss 1 ability. The boss will begin to pulse AoE and take 200% increased damage for 12 seconds. Once this is done, the boss will leave behind excessive electrification. This is excessive electrification. It will slowly grow in size, and once it's down, you will take damage as long as you are standing in it. So, don't stand in it. This final ability is Sonic Boom. It is a giant targeted circle that will move towards a player. The best way I found to deal with it is to step back and run out of the way once it is fired. If you are hit by it, then it will drag you along with it, silencing you and dealing damage. If this ability hits an obstacle like a wall, it will explode, dealing damage to all players within 7 yards. This is a Dark Fuse Inspector, which targets a player and teleports behind them, shooting a cone towards them. Welcome to either your first or second boss of the dungeon, Kiza Quick Fuse and Bront. These bosses do not share HP, but do need to die at the same time, otherwise you will cause Divided Duo, which makes them deal 20% increased damage, stacking every 4 seconds. It will also cause Bront to wall up every attack, which is almost certain death for anyone but the tank. The first ability is BBBFG, which are these orange lines on the ground. Do not stand in them, they do a lot of damage and will knock you up. Here you are about to see several abilities. The first to explain is Big Bada Boom, which will put down many bombs around the room that you need to deal with in a short time frame. Failure to deal with these bombs will lead to Deflagration, in which bombs will explode, dealing massive damage to the group and leaving a dot that ticks fire damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. The second being Barreling Charge, which will target 3 players consecutively and charge towards them, knocking any bombs out of the arena. This will also stun you if you get hit. If you manage to deal with the bombs by knocking them out of the arena, it will lead to Shrapnel, which are these orange circles on the ground. They will do a lot of fire damage, so for your benefit, do not stand in them. The last ability of note is the Kinetic Explosive Gel, in which Kiza will give a dispellable debuff in the shape of an orange circle to a player. Their job is to run and get as many, or as many that actually matter, bombs in the circle. At which point healers, you will have to dispel this for it to go off. This will also deal a good chunk of damage to the player with the debuff. Once the boss is down, I feel it is important to note the object in the middle of the room. Using the extra action button it gives you will allow you to take out the patrolling Zeppelin in the dungeon, which will free up the middle of the room. Do not miss this. Back to our list of dangerous enemies. In this instance, we have the bombshell crabs, that when defeated explode, dealing damage to the group and leaving a stacking dot. Our list continues with the Disturbed Kelp that have 2 main abilities to look out for. One being Jettison Kelp that will do group damage as it channels, and the other being Restorative Algae, which will give them a healing buff for a short time. It is good to note that these mobs can be CC'd. The list is getting down to its final 6 enemies, with the Ventrico Divers. These guys have 2 abilities. One is Harpoon that will grip a player in and do damage if it's not interrupted. And the other is Plant Seaphorium Charge, where they will place a bomb that will do massive damage and knock you high into the air. At least, if it didn't already kill you. This is Swamp Face. They have very few mechanics, but the ones that are there are important, so listen up. The first ability is Sludge Claws. The boss will hit the tank extremely hard and apply a massive absorb shield, so pop a defensive and healers help out. The next ability is Razor Stroke Vines. You will be chained to another player for 24 seconds. If you move 14 yards away, you will be yanked back together. Move with your partner. This massive line is Mudslide. Don't stand in it. It will kill you. This is a long one, but the last ability, Awaken the Swamp, can be broken down into a very simple mechanic. Swamp Face will first begin to charge the ability, causing several zones to show up. Move with your partner to a safe place away from them. Once the cast is complete, Swamp Face will begin to smash the ground, causing the zones to explode into waves of water that will push you and deal a ton of damage to you. So all in all, move to a safe place and dodge. Remember, you have 14 yards of play between you and your partner. This is Bubbles. He is cute and lovable, and he will kill you. He has 3 abilities that need to be known. The first being Bubble Burp, in which a bubble will be placed at player locations and they will travel around a bit. If you touch them, you die. The second is Splish Splash. It is a frontal cone that bubble faces at a player. It could only be the tank, as that's what happened to us, but just know that it exists. The third is Backwash, which will hit each player 3 times, applying a dot for each hit. This is just a healer mechanic. These are the last 2 enemies that I need to warn you about. The first being the Venture Co-Electrician. He does a constant cast of lightning bolts which can just be interrupted. Also, he will place a dispellable debuff on an ally. Healers, you must dispel this or the person will be stunned for a very long time. The second is a Dark Fuse Jumpstarter, and the most important thing that this guy does is he places a bunch of blue circles on the ground that you must move out of or you will die. This is Giesel Gigazap, and he waits for nobody. The abilities will start very quickly, so let's just jump in.
You dare question me?
To start off the fight, we have Giesel's first ability, Turbocharge. He will begin to emit an AoE that will deal damage to the entire group and put blue lines on the ground. Do not stand in them, otherwise you'll take a massive hit and be stunned for 1 second. This is almost certainly death on higher keys. These orange circles on the ground are Dam Rubble. They hurt. Don't stand in them. These blue circles are Dam Water. These will be useful later. If they get touched with electricity, it becomes Shock Water. This is Thunder Punch. Tanks, you will want to hit a defensive. You will be electrically charged during this, so do not step into water until it's gone. We move on to Gigazap. The boss will target 2 players to shock. They will get a small circle on them, and this will electrify and do damage to anything inside the circle, so do not stand on any of the dam waters when you get this ability. This orb right here is a Leaping Spark. The boss will summon multiple for the players, and your goal is to bring it to an unelectrified dam water to get rid of it. Just make sure the spark hops into the water. If you get hit by the spark, you will be stunned for 8 seconds. Finally is the Shock Water, which will deal a bunch of damage if you are stood inside of it. If you are the one who turns the water into shock water by stepping into it, you will be stunned for 4 seconds and take a huge chunk of damage. Congratulations on potentially timing your first Operation Floodgate. I hope this video was able to give you the knowledge to do so, or at least get you through it with a few less deaths. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.